One morning in the year 536, you walk out of your door and the sun is the wrong color. It is blue, a pale, dead blue like the moon at midday. It throws no heat. You can stare straight into it and it does not hurt your eyes. At noon, you hold up your hand and it casts no shadow on the ground, and it does not pass. Not that day, not that month. The sun stays sick and dim for a year and a half, over every land you have ever heard of, and most you haven't. The crops freeze in the middle of summer. Snow falls in August. The harvest never comes, and then the next one doesn't either. People who were fed in spring are skeletons by the following winter, and into that frozen, starving world, a plague arrives that kills one person in every 3. This really happened. The people who study it call 536 the worst year in human history to be alive. Not a war. Not one bad season. The closest the human race has ever come to the sky simply going out. This is what those people lived through. And by the end, you'll understand why a part of you still watches the sky. The people who came through the next 10 years didn't survive because they understood it. Nobody understood it. There was no word yet for a volcano on the far side of the world. No way to know the sun would ever come back at all. They survived the way people always survive the unthinkable. They stopped waiting for it to make sense, and they did whatever the next hour asked of them. Over and over, until doing it was simply who they were. It begins with the light. A man named Procopius, who was alive for it, wrote it down plainly. The sun gave its light without brightness, like the moon, all through the year. He thought it meant the end of something. A Roman writer named Cassiodorus described the same thing from far away, a blue sun at noon that cast no shadow, a moon empty of its glory, and frost in the middle of summer. He wrote that they had lived through a year with no real summer, a winter without storms, a spring without warmth, a summer without heat. Here's the receipt, and it's the part that puts a chill in the back of your neck. These men did not know each other. They lived thousands of miles apart, in different empires, writing in different languages, and they described the exact same dead, dimmed sun in the exact same year. When the whole known world writes down the same nightmare at once, it wasn't a story, it was the sky. Then the cold comes, and it comes at the wrong time of year. The growing season is when you live or die for the next 12 months. Everything you will eat in the dark of winter, you have to grow in the light of summer. And in 536, the summer doesn't come. Frost settles on the fields in July. In China, the records say snow fell in August, in the hottest part of the year, and the crops were destroyed where they stood. You watch the wheat you planted turn black in the field and rot while it is still standing. You can't fix it. You can't outwork it. The one thing that feeds the entire world, sunlight on a green field, has simply been switched off. Here's the receipt. Cut into an old tree and you can read the years in its rings. A fat ring for a good year, a thin one for a starving year. The rings from the 530s are the thinnest anyone has ever found. Across Europe, across Asia, the same dead years pressed into the wood. The trees themselves nearly stopped growing. So did everything that eats. When the harvest fails everywhere at once, there is nowhere to buy food because no one has any to sell. First you eat what's stored, then you eat the grain you were saving to plant next year, which means you have eaten next year too. Then you eat the animals, and then what the animals were going to eat. And then there is a morning where you open the store and there is nothing in it. And you understand, finally, what is going to happen to your children. In Ireland, the monks who kept the year-by-year records wrote 4 flat words for it. A failure of bread. No drama. Just the worst thing in the world, set down like the weather. In parts of China, the records say whole regions lost most of the people in them to the famine that followed. Not a village. Regions. The dying was so wide that the people writing it down ran out of ways to make it sound like anything but a number. You don't get to be brave here. You get to be hungry, and then hungrier, and then you get to decide who in your house eats the last of it. For 1400 years, nobody knew why. Then we learned to read the ice. Snow falls on Greenland and the high Alps every year and never melts, so it stacks up in layers, one for each year, like the pages of a book, and it traps whatever was in the air that year. Drill down to the layer for 536, and you find it. A thick, dirty band of volcanic ash and sulfur. A volcano, almost certainly in Iceland, had thrown so much ash into the sky that it wrapped the whole top half of the planet in a veil and blotted out the sun. And it wasn't even one. Around 540, another massive eruption. A few years after that, a third. 3 gut punches in a row, to a world already on its knees. The cold didn't lift in a year and a half. The climate stayed broken for almost 100 years. And then, into that weakened, starving world, in 541, came the plague. It moved through bodies that had nothing left to fight it, and it killed by the tens of millions, by some counts a third or more of everyone in its path. Cold, then hunger, then plague. The same people, in the same lifetime, hit by all three. So sit with this. Somewhere in that 10-year horror, the dead sun, the failed harvests, the plague carts, every single person you are descended from was alive. And every one of them lived. Not most of them. All of them. A single ancestor who lay down and gave up, who didn't fight for the last scrap or didn't crawl away from the sick. And you are simply never born. You are not the children of the people the dark finished. You are the children of the ones it couldn't. The ones who were still standing when the sun finally slowly came back. And it's still in you. The unease you feel when the sky goes a strange color before a storm. The pull to keep more food in the house than you could ever need. The way a long gray winter can press down on your chest for no reason you can name. That's not nothing. That's them. The ones who watched the sun die and kept going. Still wired into you. Still watching the sky. And if you had lived back then, you would have done the same.